Welcome to the Futuring Lab podcast, a space where together we intentionally create the future that we long for. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back on the Futuring Lab. So, this is the second part of the episode that I had done with Ebru and Andre, the two creators of Atreyu and RIA, the Regenerative Investment Funds, Regenerative Investment Academy, and I think beyond just the entity that they have created. For me, is they're pioneers in how they think, in how they see the world, how they see the world of business and the world of investing, and therefore, how actually our society and our economy could work in a very different way. I've loved the first part. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's called Business Potential Part 1. I would start there if I were you, if you haven't listened to it yet. And I've really, really enjoyed the discussion that we had in that second part, which, as you'll see, it's much more around their personal journey that kind of was prior to them inventing and creating entities and networks around regenerative investment. And I would say at the same time, they were the journeys that are still running alongside their business and that are a big, big part of, I think, the evolution that has been and to come. So I hope you enjoyed this second part. And I hope as well we'll hear what your thoughts and questions were. Don't hesitate to leave anything on social media or in the comments on the podcasts. Enjoy the show. I think that leads me to wanting to go a bit more to you when we're talking about that real care and potential realizing, and because I think for some people it's already hard to know, what do I care about? That's one big problem that I see a lot as well with my clients. It's like, what is meaningful for me? What do I care about? It's so hard because we're so much into that doing mode that it requires us to stop. It requires us to connect, to reconnect to that essence, to be able to find that out. And then I think once we found it out is, okay, even if I know what I care about, how do I do more towards it? How do I do more in that direction? I think both are pretty hard to do. So I was wondering whether you could talk to what did you have to let go of in order to enact that care, that real care that's close to each of you.
Shall I go? Oh, many things we had to let go of. Fear. Um,
Yeah.
I suppose, and fear in all aspects, fear of moving away from the known and tapping into a place that you, a path that you haven't walked before, that you're not familiar with, and nobody told you. Actually, if anything, if you thought the things that you're told are like, you are crazy, what are you thinking? Just make sense, and all of those things.
Never gonna work.
Never gonna work. You're leaving your nice job, nice thing, And especially if you have a family, if you have children to feed, on all of those things, you have responsibilities. So it's a fearful decision to make. Fear. Second, I suppose, control. You have to let go of control. It's a big one. I'd say it's a journey, and control is very much in our human nature, and so letting go of control and making peace with gray is an important one. And tuning in, like that's not. So these are, I think, for me, the two big things that we let go of: control and fear. And we had to adapt to another way of being, and being in the sense that instead of controlling, our focus is now shifting very much to sensing and helping create conditions. because control doesn't really control. I mean, if you have a child, you know that you can't control living beings. They're
As
just
much
like
as you want to sometimes, no.
it doesn't work. And as you watch them as they become teenagers, it's like mission impossible. You just can't control living beings, but you can create the conditions for them to thrive. You can help create conditions for them to thrive. So we started shifting those ways of seeing the world, and it's a constant practice. It's not it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a journey. And one thing that we realize is that it's okay something to fall into that place where, and yes, you find your place, you are controlling, and it's, I think the most important thing is that constant self-awareness. And constant seeing yourself and challenging yourself to think differently. That's the piece that I think we started adapting a lot. And moving away from autopilot, this is the way we do things, to figuring out a new way of doing and constantly being aware of how we are being in the world.
Yeah, I think, I mean, yes to all of that. Fear is obviously the ultimate kind of underlying emotion there, but, you know, it's shame and, you know, fear of loss of status, you know, like, oh, I used to be doing this, and I could explain this to my friends, and now I'm explaining something to my friends that I don't even understand properly. You know, it's like they ask me these questions, I'm like, oh, I don't know, and then they're like,
familiar.
oh, do you not know this? You know, so it is really, you know, because our circles are so conditioned as we had been. I thought. Alex, I'm going to just read something, because something that really inspired me at the time of this journey is a poet, American poet called David White. And there's a very short clip of him where he explains the difficulty of taking a new path. And he leans a little bit also on indigenous wisdom, by the way. And the poem he refers to is called Lost. I'm not reading the poem, which is also awesome, but it'll be too long. But he says, how do you know that you are on your own path? Because it disappears. How do you know you are doing something radically different? Because you cannot see where you are going. Everything you have lent on for your identity has gone. That's difficult, right? So the stuff that we grew up with, what our parents told us was right or wrong, or was great or not good, or, you know, or our friends were aspiring to and we were aspiring to it, disappears. And then you enter into the black contemplative splendor of self-doubt. And what I love about you know, he used the word splendor, because there's so much power in that. You know, it's not easy to go there, but it's a splendorous experience ultimately. And at the same time, as you set out on your new radical path, yeah, that's when you have that self-doubt. And he says, the trees ahead and the bushes around you are not lost. You know, we often, and that starts there. He starts leaning on the poem, which is inspired by this indigenous wisdom about what do you do when you get lost, and the answer is to stand still and to sense, where are you, where do you want to go, what do you want to have at your side, you know. And I found a lot of inspiration in that. I've watched that. That's probably my most watched clip ever.
It is beautiful. You know, often in times, I know you talked about, you know, the people that you work with, Alex, the big kind of people are going like, but how do I do it? And I've kind of learned that if you're really in that space where you go, this is deep inside me, I can feel that I need to. By the way, I do think that we all have that. It's just maybe it's, you know, hidden under those, you know, noises. But often this is very scary to go there. We all know it. It's there. We just don't want to take the rabbit out because it's way too scary.
Big rabbit.
Yeah, it really is scary. But the minute you take it out and go like, I don't know how the hell I'm gonna go, it's okay. That is the thing. If there was a path, that is not your path. It's somebody else to lead that path, right? The fact that there is no path is the most powerful part. And And the fact that you know where you don't want to go, that's as powerful enough. And I've been walking, kind of going with that, and it gives me a lot of comfort, like Andrea said. But when I share it with people, it's actually quite liberating. And you realize that, oh my God, I don't need to have a path. I'm going to draw my own path. That means I'm actually going to be more true to myself than ever.
Thank you. And again, I think there is a lot of things we could go into, but thank you for, I think, for your openness and your vulnerability to share all of these, because I think a lot of people will resonate with a lot of what you're sharing, but it's not necessarily shared. We tend to keep those ones hidden under a corner and then pretend it's not happening. That is just the path is obviously it's there, of course. And thank you for sharing as well the poem, Andrea. I love the idea of that contemplative, black contemplative splendor. I agree. I think we've been a lot conditioned to think that when we don't know, when we feel like we lose control, where we don't know where we're going, something is wrong with us, and it means we need to stop. Whereas I think, on the contrary, it's a hint that we just, like, something needs to stop. We need to sense and then see and stay still, as David was mentioning, to see where we go next. And maybe it's the same path. Maybe we continue exactly the same way. Maybe we reevaluate. But I think that contemplative space is absolutely key, I think, in our life to have and to hold dear. So thank you both for sharing that. I was wondering if whether you had like some key resources or key people that have inspired you and maybe supported you along your journey that you could share.
For sure. Just wanted to quickly touch on one thing, Alex, before I answer that. I mean, in terms of,
Sure.
we talked about the hardships about our personal journeys, and I suppose this was kind of, I don't know if I will qualify this as hardship, but this is an interesting one, because not knowing exactly where you're going, perhaps in the traditional sense, it's called hardship, but I don't think that was the hard, for me, it was liberating. There's something about it that, what is easy, what is difficult. I always say, it doesn't get easier, but what is interesting is that what happens when you're taking a path that is aligned with who you are, you have this energy to keep going. Your energy doesn't drain. And that's something very powerful. So you are not, you get tired, of course, but you're not suffocating. When
Yes.
you're in a place where you're not aligned, and when you're aligned with your essence, or you're
Mm.
pushing something that is not aligned with you, it can be suffocating and it can be draining.
Yeah.
This path is not always easy. Our path hasn't always been easy. Although it's getting easier, we've noticed, and I'd love to share that as well.
Mm-mm.
It's definitely getting easier. Although it's liberating. So it's okay to do the hard work. The work doesn't feel like that much of work where we are. And I know it sounds almost too good to be true, but it is. We're working hard, but I think we're enjoying what we're doing, and it's giving us more energy than it's taking away energy, which is very, very important. And what Andre and I have realized, we talked about, we started with Atreyu and then we moved on to RIA, and it was our own growth journey as well. And even when we started saying, okay, we're going to start from first principles, we still had so much in our minds about how to do the things in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had most of our conflicts, and he would come up and go like, oh, we should do it this way. I would say we should do it this way. The more we've eased into doing things more naturally and at our own intuition, at our own pace, or building on our own way of being and strengths, the more at ease we have become. And in the last maybe we've been working together, 6 years? The last 2 years have been probably the most in sync we've been, because we just keep complementing each other, and that those energies just flow, which is beautiful, which is that we've noticed, right?
Yeah, if I can add two things there. The one is absolutely the last couple of years have been the easiest, or felt the easiest, because I think because neither of us knew the path forward, right? If one of you knows the path forward, or both of you know the path forward, it's very unlikely to be the same path,
True.
right? It's constructed in your own little world and imagination, and then you will clash. No, this is the path. This is the path. No, this is the path. That's where conflicts can come. Or if one knows the path, the other doesn't, you also have the risk of losing the other, or the other feeling less meaningful. And so, because we didn't have a path, either of us, especially like when RIA was born, like that is something that really emerged. It emerged from our work, that and both of our essence as was thrown into one pot at Atreyu, really flowed. So definitely that has helped a lot.
Yeah.
The one thing is, and also to demonstrate a little bit that there can be disagreement, I want to just qualify a bit what Ebru just said about the hardships. So in terms of the work, there haven't been hardships. So if you earlier on, you said, yeah, I also want to hear a little bit about the negative experiences. Like we can talk about, an underperformance of a portfolio company, etc. But in terms of, but to be honest, that's part of the investing process, right? In terms of what we've created, we haven't really had a major setback. Like we haven't failed because we didn't really know what. Again, we didn't have a goal that has to be this by then.
Yeah.
We had set, and so from that perspective, I agree. But there have been hardships, and I'm going to talk for myself in the personal journey, right? When you reinvent yourself and take a path that is radically different, and that your family and your friends and your immediate environment said, this is the right path. Oh, this is so great. You wear a suit and a tie. You go to conferences all over the world. Like, how could you give that up? That has been very difficult. It has been very challenging at times to feel it. You do feel lonely at times, and so that has been my hardship, is sometimes going like, who's with me? Like, and you look around you, there's no one there, right? Because you've moved away so much from your traditional way of being that fitted in so nicely into other people's dreams and thoughts. And so I know you had also originally asked about, how the reason why we have been doing this together and how we were able to do this together as kind of husband and wife, or life partners and business partners, is because there's a phrase that we also learned many, many years ago, which talks about maximum growth happens at the border of challenge and support. Right. And so we've been challenging ourselves very strongly, but we've also supported each other very strongly. And so that's why our journey probably has been, when there were hardships that I just expressed, I knew that Ebru was going to be there, and so that was very comforting and gave me a lot of strength. And so I do think, to the listeners, like, it can be a lonely journey, and you want to ideally not be doing this alone. You want to know that you are well supported.
Thank you. Let's give a lot of hope, I think. And thank you as well for opening up around the loneliness of not following a set path, I guess, and of letting go of a lot of things, a lot of perceptions that people had about us, or a set mold, or also the perceptions that we had for ourselves, or expectation that we had for ourselves, and just being okay with it, with putting them down. I know that it's also my journey, and it can feel very lonely at times. And I think having exactly those connections and those opportunities, those remembering that interconnectedness makes a big, big difference.
Absolutely. maybe just one liner, and then I think it links nicely to the question that you ask. When you do this work, I think community matters a lot. And for me, ironically, I think I felt less of the loneliness compared to Andre because I was in an environment I was actually supported by the regenerative community more. I already had a lot more connections and I felt like I was being held. And I think Andre was still making the transition from the conventional world into a slightly different space, or if I can say it, the regenerative world. And it was a little bit more lonely for him, also because physically we were separate. But the community matters, and it's a journey that you know. Yes, you can do it. Well, I suppose you can't do it alone. You know, is life we're not meant to live it alone, and it does make a big difference to have the community around you. And we have been blessed to have an amazing group of colleagues and friends and network that formed around us, which really, you know, makes us incredibly grateful. And I think we started our journey with John Fullerton, the Introduction to Regenerative Investing through Regenerative Economics with the Capital Institute. I was cohort 1 of John.
Okay.
And I still have connections with a lot of people from that first cohort. And we stayed in touch and we, you know, support each other's initiatives. And it was already a community that was forming. And then obviously, uh, I suppose like everyone who has been on this path, I've done a lot of courses with Fritjof, Copra, and I've done Regenesis, the called the
TRP, the
TRP,
regenerative
the
practitioner.
regenerative practitioner. And I've done the Laura Storm, regenerative leadership. But I think for me, the essence of it is John has become a good friend and stayed, you know, really supported our journey. And Regenesis Institute also became a very, very important partner, and Institute itself became a friend almost, because we've come to get to know a lot of people. And like so Ben Haggart, who's one of the founders of Regenesis Institute, has been an incredible supporter of our work, and his generosity and, you know, with time and guidance and spirit has been incredible. And Sydney Cano and other regenerative faculty and you know, a lot of people in our community, we can't name them all, but all of these people have showed up and support of us on our journey. And of course, we do the same for them. But still, we get tearful sometimes when we see how they are committed
Yeah.
to this path.
The care, you know, they've invested so much care into our endeavors, into RIA, into Atreyu, into our own personal development on this journey. And I did want to link this back to the regenerative principles and to regenerative investing, because we see how much, and remember I made the point, I saw that you smiled about, we are all investors. You know, people think that money rules the world, you know, and unfortunately in the current system it probably does. But the amount of advance or evolution that we have enjoyed as a RIA Atreyu has really come on the back of a lot of investment of care from the names that we mentioned. And we'd like to believe that we've reciprocated. So reciprocation in living system is a key living system principle.
Yeah.
You know, that there's a constant exchange between the parts to in service of life, right? In service of evolution, in service of viability and vitality. And we've seen that. We have been, I mean, we have really been beneficiaries of that. And and so
Absolutely.
that value exchange has been very, very powerful and very humbling.
Very humble. Amazing.
Thank you for both your answers, and it's making me also realize that I've asked the question around the resources in a very conventional way. I've asked you what has been helpful on your way, and there is an element of what, but from what I'm picking up on, there is much more an element of who has helped you. So I guess it's maybe more who has been helpful, has been really key on your journey as well. So thank you for sharing that, and that element of care and reciprocity in community that is absolutely key. So another question I was curious about, still in that continuity of what you had to let go of, who has been really helping you on that journey, and what do you see coming next? What do you feel on an individual standpoint? What do you feel that you still want to work through, or that is you still want to focus on individually?
So as you asked the question, actually, something that comes up for me quite strongly is that. So we talk about the 3 levels of work in our framework around working on ourselves is the starting point. And to be honest, should always be the first starting point for anyone, right? To
Yes.
get that right, and to understand our essence and to be more congruent with it. And I feel like, that's a lot of work that I've done, and certainly is not going to stop. It never stops, right? Then there's the other level, which is the furthest removed, which is, the businesses and the investors. And I do a lot of work there. I love the connections. I love working with that, players in that space. And we are doing RIA to also help, share our approach and our inspirations with others to see if something similar can inspire them. But then that second line of work, which is working with those that we work with directly, and resourcing them, is something that I really want to learn still. And that's where we have benefited from the likes we've mentioned, Ben Haggard and Sydney Cannell. We actually currently giving a course, our first program, which we are quite proud of. Last night we had our 3rd session, and Alex, we are very pleased that you are on the course as well. And that's a course that we designed with a couple of facilitators who are giving the course. And Sydney is also on that course. And last night we had a little debrief, and really very powerful learning for me in terms of how, I still sometimes in a setting like that think, oh, I might be a teacher, or like I'm an external person. Like there's the cohort, here's me.
Yeah, I see.
The case, right? That's not consistent with what I've shared earlier on, that we are all part of the same system. And it was great learning yesterday when Sydney also said, no, we are all like, how can we make sure that we form part of the system, or of that cohort? And what we can contribute to that is not how smart we are. And Ebru mentioned it earlier on, that like there are no experts currently because it's so early in the journey, but actually there are no experts, full stop. Why? Because everyone is unique. Every context is unique. I cannot be an expert for someone that lives in Latin America and has a completely different problem set and context than me.
Sure.
I can't be expert to them, And so so how can I then support if I'm in a breakout room, is through just forming part of the cohort, and caring for it, and expressing my care as to how are we trying to understand the problems that we are trying to kind of manage in life, or that we are trying to apply ourselves as regenerative investors, and try and make my contribution like that. And that is a skill, that's a capability that needs to be built. And I would love to learn more about how to be such a developmental partner.
Very nice. I think for me, I mean, Andre touched on it already, but it's for me, I feel like I've been since my 40s almost, that on a journey of being more and more true to myself, and just freeing myself up from any imposition that I have to be in a certain way. I have to be a certain person, and do business in a certain way, or be a certain type of mother, and all of those things. But as I approach 50s, which is very close, I'm feeling it even more that I think I really want to be 100% true to my essence and whatever that means, and bring that to life and express it in the most meaningful way in the context that I'm in. And that requires a lot of practice as well, and developmental work in terms of just being one, right? Being conscious of that interconnectedness and seeing the whole, and helping create the conditions and the energy fields for all of us to express ourselves in the most meaningful way and realize our potential.
Thank you, both. It's so it's great how what you both shared. On Andre, you said I want to move from being less of an expert and more of a carer, I guess. And Ebru, you said being more and more in your essence. It's exactly congruent to what you said was important throughout the whole of the podcast. And I love the questions and love the points that we've discussed. Those two things really, for me, they really stood out in both of your stories. So it's lovely as well to see that that silver lining in both. Thank you. So we are touching to the end of the podcast. And there are two things. Maybe let's do the pragmatic or practical thing, and then let's leave our listeners on a inspirational type of or open question, maybe more. So I was more curious, maybe can you share how people can reach out to you? You mentioned the course that you started in week 3, which I'm one of the lucky people who is taking part of. So thank you again. It's a wonderful course, like way beyond, I don't know, I don't think I had necessarily a set thing, but it goes even beyond something that I hadn't imagined. So really great course. What are the highlights of what you're doing now, or what's coming next? How can people get involved with what you're doing? And I'll put all the links to also what you're doing so that it's easy for people to find you.
Fantastic. Good.
You talk about the
Yeah,
program, and you can talk
just
about
go
what's
on.
next. So we launched. So with RIA, we have a couple of ways that we bring others into the same practice. And we've done a couple of events, like the really immersive and perhaps most transformative ones would be our 2-day events. Done a couple, and we'll do others. And normally we do those in partnership with an organization that wants to make this available to their audience. Then we have created our first program, which is a 12-session virtual program. It's a weekly 2-hour session where we share the key concepts of regenerative investing. And we also then, every alternating session, we really do the embodied work. What does it feel like? We really practice with some of the new concepts that we are learning, and that hopefully lead to a shift in paradigm or mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a link. We've done our 3rd session out of 12, but we're going to have 1, maybe even 2 cohorts in starting in January. So if people want
exciting.
people want to take part in that, it'd be great for you to share that brochure, the link to the brochure. And then why don't you talk about the other program that we're developing, and we can also briefly touch on the circles, because they are important for the developmental journey.
So, I mean, we talked about regeneration being a journey. Regenerative investing is no different. It's also a journey. It doesn't stop at 12 weeks. It starts at 12 weeks and it goes lifelong. But we are crafting a new program called Realizing Potential. We're doing it in partnership with the Regenesis Institute. It really Regenerative Institute has got this program, the Regenerative Practitioner. It's called TRP. It's their flagship program. And they've been doing this, I think, for almost 30 years. and it's really an incredible program both Andre and I have been through. It focuses very much on regenerative development. So what we want to do is that take key elements of that program, but really bring it into the context of investing.
Okay.
Then really brings to life what we call realizing potential, which is a key practice of the regenerative investor. We work with the potential. And so with the introduction to regenerative investing, the idea is that you walk into a new world and get a glimpse of what that world looks like. But with realizing potential, you really start getting your hands dirty and try bring it to your own practice and experience firsthand. And that's the beauty of it. Then we will have follow-up programs afterwards, but realizing potential is the next program that we're working on, which we are very excited about. The further to that is again, touching on the fact that this is a journey. We will be providing circles. And circles are, a group of individuals that will come together, probably roughly 8 to 10 people max, coming together monthly. But the whole idea is that we support our community through this evolutionary journey as they bring regenerative investing practice to life in their everyday business or investing practice. Because as we mentioned, this is a learning journey. And we all need to figure it out for ourselves. But what becomes really powerful is that if you do it with a community, which the circles are designed to provide that community for you, and they're also designed to create a space where you can share your experience, you can learn from others' experience, you can put your challenges forth and see if you can collectively find an answer. So they have a developmental angle to them, but mainly around helping you figure out your own path.
I love it. It sounds very, again, that reciprocity element. It looks like that's where you've benefited from to go on your own journey, and what you're then offering now and creating that environment for others to have. It's a lovely, very lovely idea. Feel the flow of it.
Exactly. And maybe just one line. I mean, you're going to put it in your wherever this goes, but it's called, we've got our website. It's www.regenerativeinvesting.academy. So for RIA, you can find all the information there, all our programs and events and offerings. And for Atreyu, it's www.atreyu.global. And you can also have a sense of what Atreyu does and how we invest and who are, amazing investee companies are.
Thank you. That's great. I'm super pleased that the cohort 1 and 2 and from the Regenerative Investing are already on the plan, which I'm not surprised. Good. So a last question. Before I go into the last question, is there anything that you feel is important that you'd like to share that we haven't necessarily touched on?
Maybe one thing, I think it's important. Often in regenerative practice, we talk about, aligning with life, and that is very important. But that doesn't mean that there are no mechanistic elements of what we do in business. Okay, so I just want to be, and in our practice as well, in investing practice, we do analysis as well. There's nothing wrong with doing analysis. There's nothing wrong with looking at numbers. What matters is how you do it and how you approach it. So how is the part that is most important? And so I just want to emphasize that, because often when we talk about regenerative investing and regeneration, we focus on the living systems element of it, because that's the one that is missing in our current practice. But that doesn't mean that we don't bring anything analytical, any structure or things like that. We do have a structure. We have analytical elements in the practice of investing, in the operational part of the investing, but we very much they come secondary, yeah, rather than the first. And I think that's the important element. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing because our brain tends to go on either or. So if that one is just all wrong or is just all right, I think thank you for bringing that up.
Integrate both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to have both. Otherwise, you lose the structure and perhaps you lose some of
Completely.
the analytical thinking, and you don't want to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that precision. Good. So last question I thought of is something I asked my kids actually a few months ago, and I was just amazed at their response. And I thought I would be super curious to hear yours. So I had asked them if we had just watched Aladdin. I said, if you had 3 wishes, what would that be? And I was expecting, standard kids like having a world that looks like a giant candy store or something like that. And there is an element of that, but they gave also some beautiful answers. I was wondering if you had 2 wishes each, what would these be?
You go first.
So for me, my biggest wish would be that some of the misconceptions about how humans function or think or act and how humanity is, in other words, this whole concept of the Homo economicus, the ultra-rational human being, the self-serving, self-maximizing human being, like those are misconceptions in my mind. And certainly they form much too strong a foundation to a lot of decision making that happens in the modern and Western world. And so I just wish those conceptions weren't there, or certainly weren't as strong and as dominant as they are. And then the other thing is, that this concept of care, that this and idea of empathy, that it was much more accepted to be something that was useful to humanity. If you think about politics and who the people that dominate politics, world politics today, are all these, kind of unfeeling, human beings, and we miss I forget her first name, Ahern from New Zealand. That's the kind of, that care element that it was much more prevalent in today's world in decision making.
Who did we miss?
The lady from New Zealand, Jacinta Ardern. Thank you.
Jacinta Ardern.
Ardern.
I think, yeah. Cool. Yeah, mine is similar, I think. I wish we could see that we are all interconnected.
Yeah.
I really wish. I think that could just remove a lot of the suffering altogether. And I mean, my second one is complementary to that. Is especially the suffering. I wish we could somehow remove the suffering of the animals and the nature, and just the extractive practices that we do, well, to ourselves as well, right? To nature, to ourselves, and but it all starts with the first point, because if you do see the interconnectedness, it takes away that extractive nature altogether.
Thank you. Very, gives I don't know, it feels very open. I love the idea of having a world with more care or more interconnectedness and less Homo economicus with us. So, yeah, I definitely would love that for us as well. Okay, well, I think it's time for thank you. And I think beyond thank you is just to share how grateful I feel to have met you both, to be part of that course, part of your circles, and to have shared this moment with you. I'm sure the listeners will absolutely love it. I know I've loved it and learned a lot. So really want to thank you both for coming today, for agreeing to invest your time together and sharing from your heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for having us.
Yeah.
And for holding the space for interesting stories, and looking forward to learning more from your podcast as well.
Yeah. Thank you. That was really nice. Nice space.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that space.
Me too, very much. Thank you. I hope, dear listeners, that you've enjoyed it as well, as much as we did. I will put all the elements that Ebru and Andre mentioned in the show notes, so you can find everything back. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, your questions that came up from that episode. So don't hesitate to reach out on social media, on the podcast itself, so that we make sure we keep the conversation alive. Thank you and have a great rest of your week. Bye.